So today's lesson is 15-3, which is histograms. So before we start, I would like for you to watch a video on Khan called Creating a Histogram. Okay? Once you finish that, then I would like for you to write down this vocabulary down here. So the first one is a histogram. Data from a frequency table can be displayed as a histogram, and that is a type of bar graph that is used to display numerical data that has been organized into equal intervals. When it's displayed like this, you can see the frequency distribution. Now remember, frequency means how many times something occurs, okay? So this allows you to see that distribution of the data. In other words, it's the quantity of data that are in each interval. That's the frequency, okay? It is important that the intervals are equal and consecutive so that you can make accurate observations about the data based on the height of the bars. So the intervals, they have to be equal. So like, for example, they have to have 3 numbers in each interval, for example, or 2 numbers. So you can go 0, 1, 2, that's 3 numbers, including the 0. Then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so forth, okay? And then finally, intervals should leave no gaps, so the entire range of the data can be represented, okay? So we'll get into that example later on. Now, when constructing histograms, you need to include a title that reflects the data shown in the graph. You also have to include a label for the horizontal axis. Now remember, that horizontal axis, that is the x-axis. Don't forget about that, okay? Then we want to include a label for the vertical axis. What's that vertical axis called, by the way? This is label for the vertical axis. That's called the y-axis. The vertical one, that's the one that goes up and down. That's the y-axis. Okay? So remember, the horizontal axis is the one that goes left and right, and the y-axis is the one that goes up and down. Okay? Oh, let me put that in green. That one is the one that goes up and down. Okay? And then finally, we want to make sure that we use an appropriate scale for both axes that fits the data and the frequency. Okay? Now, that is for the intervals and for the frequency. So consider the following situation. It says, the number of wins by several football teams in recent years are as follows. Okay, so here's the wins. And don't forget this number 13 down here. The frequency table shows this organized data using intervals of 3 wins. The histogram below was constructed using the data in the frequency table. So here with these, when we're making, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a frequency table. Now, I know in this chart it only shows you 2 columns, but you're actually going to have a middle column in here that has tallies, okay? So here, the lowest value is 1, the highest value is 13, okay? So here, they even told you they're putting these, organizing these in intervals of 3 wins. So this is 0, 1, and 2. You see there's 0 is a number, so it's 0, 1, and 2. So there's 3 numbers in there. Then we have 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7, and 8, and so forth. So there are 3 numbers in each one of those intervals. The histogram over here, also, when we organize these, the frequencies are 2, 5, 7, 0, and 2. Okay? Now, when we look at the histogram here, you will see that there are no spaces in between each of those bars, right? Now, there's a space right here, but that's just because there were no wins in the interval 9 to 11, okay? So, but between the bars that are right next to each other, there are no spaces between those bars, okay? Now, here we also want to use the values for vertical axis that include the least and the greatest frequencies. So you want to always include the least and the greatest frequencies, okay? The intervals are equal, so you can analyze the heights of the bar. You can see this has 2 wins here, 5 wins here, 7 here, 0 in the in the 9 to 11 wins, so nobody won 9 to 11 games, and then 12 to 14, that's 2. Okay. We draw a bar for each of the interval that is the frequency of the data in the interval. Okay. Frequencies of 0, just like in this one, will have a height of 0, and that's what that means. And then we want to use intervals from the frequency table as the intervals for the horizontal axis. So let's analyze this situation. Example 1 says, the table shows the number of tickets sold for each showing of a movie at a theater for 16 days. We want to use the given information to determine an appropriate title and labels for the axes, for the X and Y axis. The frequency interval for the horizontal axis, and the range of the values for the vertical axis and the histogram that would represent the data. So we want the title, okay? So let's start with the title. It says we want an appropriate title. And of course, there's a title right there in the problem, in the table. Okay, so this is the tickets sold. So the title will be tickets sold. Okay. Then it says, let's see here. We want to have appropriate labels for the axes. So the axes, of course, are the x-axis and the y-axis. So for the frequency interval will go on the horizontal axis. That goes to the horizontal axis. And the range of values for the vertical, that tells us the frequency. So we want values for the vertical axis. We want to know the labels for that. So on the vertical axis, that's the y-axis, it's always going to be frequency. Okay, so the y-axis, that's always going to be frequency. Okay, and then on the x-axis, those are going to be our intervals. And those intervals are the number of tickets sold. So we're going to put, for the label, number of tickets sold. Now when we look at this, when we're looking at the intervals, this down here is going to be the intervals. We can look to see what's the lowest number and what's the highest number. Then we can decide what our intervals are going to be. So let's see here. We've got the lowest number, 22, and the highest number, 52. Okay, so we've got the lowest number, 22, yeah, and the highest number, 52. Okay, so how about if we counted by tens? So we could have intervals that were, let's see here, we can count from 20 to 29, so that's all of the 20s. Then we can have 30 to 39. There's all of the 30s. 40 to 49. 50 to 59. And 60 to 69. Okay, actually, we don't even need that one because the highest number is 52, right? So we've got 50 to 59, and that's all we need right there. So that's how we can determine what our intervals will be. Okay? The frequency, depending on how many there are in each one, will determine what we're going to count by. So when I was looking at this, we had 4, 5 here, 4 here, and 3 here. So when we're looking at the number of times we get that number of tickets sold in that interval, you can see our data goes from 3 to 5. So we can go ahead for our frequencies. We can count from 0 to 5, and we can count by ones, okay? And then we can put our table together. So let's do example 2 together, and then I'll let you go do the example 1B and example 2B on your own, okay? So it says, a student in Mrs. Angelo's class were asked the question, how many books did you read over the summer vacation? The responses are shown in the table right here. We want to construct a histogram to represent the data and summarize the results. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to organize this data in a frequency table. So remember I told you there are going to be 3 columns here. So you've got in your frequency table, you've got an interval. Those are the intervals we're going to write here. We're going to tally. That's when you just draw the lines for the number of how many times things happen. And then the frequency is just the actual number, okay? So first thing we want to do is we want to create our intervals. So we want to look to see what is the lowest number and what is the highest number. So the lowest number, of course, you can see it is 0. The highest number is 14. So how about if we count by intervals of 3? So let's do 0 to 2. So that's 0, 1, 2. 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 11. 12, 13, 14. And that will include all of them. So now we want to tally it. So all we're going to do is we are going to look at the numbers, and whatever interval it belongs in, we're just going to put a little tally mark. So this is 3, 6, 5, 7, 7. So this is 3, 6, 5, 7, 7. And that takes care of our first column. Okay? Then we've got 6, 3, 12, 3, 13. So that's 6, 3, 12, 3, 13 down here. That takes care of our second column. Then we've got 4, 9, 10, 7, 14. So we've got 4. Now look at how we tally the 4, because this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's another 4. So 5 numbers in there goes like this. You put it a line across it like that. So now we can continue with 9, 10. Let's see. So we've got 9, 10, 7 goes here again. We put the line, and 14 down here. That's that one. Then we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. That's that one. 8, 1, 11. So 8, 1, 11, 12 down here, and 1 up there. 0, 4. So that's 0, 4, the line, 0, 6, and here, and 2, right there. So there's how you do your tallies. And now you just write the number. So there's 5 here. So whenever you see the line, there's a 5. It says 5 plus 1, there's 6. This one is 10. Then we've got 7 here, 3, and 4. And there is your frequency table. So now we can put all of this information on our graph. So we're going to start with the title, which is number of books read. So we can write number, you know what, I'm just going to write books read over the summer. Books read over summer. So now we want to put our intervals. Those go on the x-axis, so those go down here. So we're counting, let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 intervals there. So I'm going to go ahead and just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, the intervals you write in between those tick marks. You don't write it on the tick marks. You go in between. So you're going to have 0 to 2 here, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, 9 to 11, and 12 to 14. And that goes right in there. Let's scooch that over a little bit. So now you can see for the frequencies, we're going, the lowest number is 3, the highest number is 10. So we can, I guess we can count by ones. We have enough space on our graph. So here, this is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I know it looks like we're counting by twos, but if you look, we still have a line in between, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you gotta make sure you pay attention to your labeling, okay? Now, again, on the y-axis, the label is always frequency. So the label is always frequency for the y-axis. On the x-axis, that is the number of books. Right? Oops. Put that in red. Okay, that's the number of books. So now we can go ahead and put the bars to show the frequency. So for 0 to 2, that was 6 read 0 to 2 books. So 6 students read 0 to 2 books. Okay, so here's 6, and there is 0 to 2 books. Then we have 10 students read 3 to 5 books. So you put a box, whoops, not a circle. You put, there you go. 7 students read 6 to 8 books. So here's 6 to 8, and 7 is right in between here. So we've got 7 students that read 6 to 8 books. 3 read 9 to 11 books, and 4 read 12 to 14 books. Now, I want you to color in the bars, okay? So just to make it easy for yourself, you can just put lines, okay? If you have colors, you can use colors. If you don't have colors, you just have your pencils, that's how you can see, putting the lines, you can tell the difference between the bars, okay? So then, you know, just get a little creative, I guess. And then, all right, and there's your histogram. So now I would like for you to go back to example 1B and example 2B, and I would like for you to do those on your own. So press pause on this video, and so you can press play again and check your answers when you're done. So here we have example 1B, which is the histograms. It says, Tina randomly surveyed students in her school by asking the question, how many books did you read last month? So using this information, we want to determine the appropriate title and labels for the axes, the frequency interval for the horizontal axis, and the range values for the vertical axis of a histogram that would represent the data. So you can see that I did a little checking. Okay, so here the title would be books read last month. Okay, on the y-axis, remember we said frequency is always your label on the y-axis. Okay, and then on the x-axis, which is the intervals, we looked to see what the lowest number and the highest numbers were. The lowest number was 1, the highest number is 8. So we counted by twos. So we have intervals of 2 numbers in each interval. So 0, 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 9. Okay? And then, of course, on the y-axis for the frequency, I looked to see how many times I got a number for each one of my intervals. So those numbers on the y-axis went from 1 to 10. So on that, I just counted. You can either count by ones or twos, depending on what you like to do on when you create your display. This one is example 2B. It says Mrs. Everly gave a test to her third period class, a math class. The table shows the results. Construct a histogram to represent the data and summarize the results. So here, the first thing we wanted to do is we want to create a frequency table. So on that frequency table, I looked at my data. Okay, I looked at my data and I said the lowest score is a 60, the highest score is a 99. So I counted by groups of 10. So and 60s, this is all the 60s, all the 70s, all the 80s, and all the 90s. And that's usually how you see the test scores anyways, right? That's 60 to 69, 70 to 79, 80 to 89, 90 to 99, and up here, nobody got 100, so we didn't have to include that next 100 to 109. We didn't have to include that next interval. So here, now we tally. Once I tallied, okay, so I went through and I just tallied where the 72, the 97, the 80, wherever they went in the intervals. And then we counted them up. So here's our frequency. So the intervals go on the x-axis. So there are my intervals, and I'm going to call those the number of test scores. And of course the y-axis is always called frequency, right? And here I decided again to count by ones, just because on my graph I have all the way up to 12. So here I could include the 11. So I counted by ones on the y-axis. Okay, and then I put the bars in. So there's two students got a D. 5 students got a C. 10 students got a B. And 11 students got an A. Okay? And if you want, you could also put those numbers at the top of the bar. So here this is 2, this is 5, this is 10, and this is 11. And of course, there's my title up there. I forgot to say that. The test scores. And this is your histogram. Remember, notice that we have equal intervals on the x-axis. Okay, the frequency, an appropriate scale for the y-axis. We have a title and label for each of the axis and the histogram. When we create the boxes, there are no spaces between the bars. No spaces between the bars. And that's it.